Hey everyone! If you recall from my last newsletter, I asked for feedback on what topics you would like me to cover in future videos. So today's video will be the first in that series, and we will be covering grass-fed beef. And specifically, what does the label grass-fed actually mean? Why is it more nutritious for you? And why should you care? So I'll start off by letting you know that about 95% of red meat that people consume actually comes from factory farms, or CAFOs, which stands for Confined Animal Feeding Operations. So think of a factory farm as this massive, massive farm where there are literally thousands of animals crammed into extremely small spaces, and the conditions are very unsanitary. And the whole goal here is to fatten the animals up as quickly as possible to send them off to slaughter as quickly as possible, because this is what is the most profitable. So a cow is supposed to eat grass and hay. That's the diet that nature intended for them. But in these factory farms, they don't ever eat grass or hay. They're eating a mixture of corn and soy and different grains because this is extremely cheap. So when a cow is eating this diet that is completely unnatural for them, their whole body composition changes. They end up producing more omega-6 fatty acids, which that can be highly inflammatory when they're completely out of balance, when the ratio between the omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids is out of balance. That can be extremely inflammatory. So I'm sure you've heard, you need to get more omega-3s, and people are always, interested in eating seafood to get their omega-3s, because the human body can't actually produce omega-3s. We have to get it from our food. So one way to do that is by eating the healthy grass-fed beef. But unfortunately, when it comes to these factory farms, that's just not the case. So we're eating, the meat in turn is more inflammatory, and it's higher in the wrong types of fats that can promote heart disease. So in addition to this food dilemma, there's also this there's all of these antibiotics, the hormones, and the different steroids that these cows and other animals are being constantly injected with. So the antibiotics are used because when a cow is eating a diet that is not natural for them, they get sick. They have digestive issues. They're prone to infection. Their immune systems are very weak, so they get disease more frequently. So the antibiotics are used for basically the duration of the cow's life in hopes to prevent or treat those diseases and those infections. But the problem is those antibiotics, of course, end up in the meat that we're eating. And, as humans, we're more prone to antibiotics resistance because we're constantly being exposed to that low dose of the antibiotics that we're eating in our food, which is gross. So we have to be cautious of that and be aware of, of how much exposure we're getting to antibiotics without even realizing it. The next thing we have to worry about is hormones. So there are a lot of hormones that are being injected into these animals because it helps to fatten them up. And this is being passed along into the meat that we're getting, of course. And a lot of scientists believe that human consumption of estrogen from this hormone-fed beef can result in cancer, premature puberty, and falling sperm counts. So another thing to be aware of. And, a lot of people say to me, oh, well, I buy organic beef, so, I'm sure that's better. I think that I'm better off that way. And a lot of times you are somewhat better off. It's a step up from, this conventionally raised meat. But a lot of times organic cows are still being fed the corn, the soy, and the grain, which is, more inflammatory, and they're producing the wrong types of fats that can still contribute to, heart disease and just overall more inflammation in the body. So organic is a little bit better because the grains are likely not genetically modified, so that's a step up. And you do see labels where it says organic or hormone-free, antibiotic-free. So that's better than the conventional stuff, for sure. But the best thing to do is to look for the grass-fed beef, which is definitely more expensive, but you're getting far more for your money health-wise. However, you still have to be careful with grass-fed beef because there's not much regulation around the term grass-fed, and the FDA's definition of grass-fed is that the animals have access to the outdoors for the grass growing season, which, depending on where in the country you live, the grass growing season might be less than 6 months out of the year. So it's really important, and for the other 6 months of the year, those cows are being sent to these factory farms or CAFOs where they're likely being fed that mixture of soy, corn, and grain. And even just after 80 days of eating that mixture of grains, all of those healthy fats that the cow once had are now completely gone, and they're the more inflammatory types of fats and the harmful types of saturated fats. So you have to be careful. And I think the best route to take is to get to know your local farmer, or at a farmer's market, you can ask the local farmer there who's likely selling meat from his own farm. Ask them questions. Ask them what they feed their animals, how they treat their animals, how they raise them. So just asking the right questions and just being more aware about how the animal was raised can make a huge difference for your health. And there are also a couple websites online. You can buy grass-fed beef online pretty easily. There's a website called alderspring.com, and then there's one called thousandhillscattleco.com. And there are plenty others out there. I think the best thing to look for is a website or a farmer who's extremely transparent about their farming practices and about the way they raise their animals and what they feed their animals. So look out for that. Just ask more questions, and if anything, maybe eat less of the conventionally raised stuff. That would make a difference for your health too, for sure. Anything that we can do to reduce the amount of inflammation in our bodies and, up the amount of nutrition that we're getting from our food obviously makes us far better off. And a lot of diseases are caused by inflammation. That is the root cause of so many chronic diseases. So we don't want to be eating meat that is actually causing inflammation in our bodies. And another benefit for grass-fed meat is that it's much higher in different vitamins and different minerals, like calcium and magnesium and potassium and all the B vitamins, which can be tough to get from food sometimes. And it's higher in the omega-3s, the conjugated linoleic acid that I mentioned earlier, which are both great for reducing inflammation. They're great for brain function and for proper cell function. So all of these benefits are what you're getting when you eat grass-fed meat. And sometimes, you'll see the label grass-fed, grass-finished. That's ultimately what you're looking for, because that means that the cow was fed grass or hay for its entire lifetime. If it's grass-fed and grass-finished, then, that's a higher quality product. Because again, sometimes grass-fed might mean that it was only grass-fed for a portion of its life and then fed grains for the rest of its life, and then it's still just as bad as the meat from a grain-fed cow. So I hope that was helpful for you, and I know that was a lot of information. Let me know if you have any further questions, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.